People that work or have worked in bikini waxing salons. What is the worst disturbing experience you have come across while giving someone a bikini wax? NSFW. Not my story, but had a friend who did waxing for a while. She had a guy come in and request a waxing for his taint ass area. When she did, the guy orgasmed on release. It was obviously awkward. The guy apologized profusely, and it was a no harm no foul but don't do it again situation. Well, of course he returned after some time and he came again. They banned him from returning. I always feel so self-conscious before going for a bikini wax, and I always tell myself they've seen worse. Thanks for confirming that. My friend is esthetician. She has sent ladies to the gym for growths, romas, etc. She says it's about once a month that she has to have that awkward talk with a client. The worst one she ever told me about was a sweet older lady with a labial abscess. Poor woman. It must have hurt like hell. She had it treated and came back to say thank you. Not a waxer but a spray tanner. For well-endowed women of the bust or butt, the policy is arms overhead or turn around and bend over. Only if absolutely necessary do you lift with the back of the hand and spray underneath. On this lovely day I had a particularly hefty woman come in and she don't want no tan lines. It was time for turn around and bend over. Lift the butt and what looked like a week old sopping brown tampon comes slurping out. Bounces off the back of my hand and splats on the floor. At one point in my aesthetics career I did a lot of waxing. Like 12 Brazilians a day. So I have seen smelt some horrifying it. The most memorable WTF moment was while waxing a well-groomed sorority girl. She was utterly oblivious to the rank odor emanating from her junk. There was discharge. I pulled a strip from her lower labia, near her veal opening, and what I can most accurately describe as the contents of a large Cadbury cream egg stuck to the edge of the strip and splattered on the wall behind me. She remained blissfully ignorant of the bacterial projectile. I've had a few Brazilians done and I asked my waxer what her worst experiences were and she said there are so many people who come straight from the gym or their afternoon jog or their strenuous workplace without showering or anything. How can you have that little self-awareness? A worm fell out of someone's butthole when I was waxing it. A tiny, little maggot-well looking worm. I think the toughest thing I've ever seen through as a waxer was a minor getting a Brazilian. Yes, her parent knew and signed a consent form, who didn't clean herself properly. Looked like she had diarrhea and wiped back to front, with super thick hair, and I got stuck pulling a labia strip. It was my fault. I didn't cleanse and poke around thoroughly enough before I started. But I almost went to go get a co-worker BC. I thought I was going to need help pulling it off. Client was a champ though. Bore with me throughout the whole process. Definitely the toughest experience I've had. Even beyond the 400 plus LB ladies I see. I've been a body waxer for 5 years now. And we are a special breed. It's almost like nursing when it comes to putting on the professional face when we're confronted with something gross. But TBH. It's really not that bad of a profession. Smells yes. Some excretions yes. Blood yes. Even poop sometimes yes. But you're there to do a job. And if you're good enough at it you push through it. These people are opening up an incredibly vulnerable part of their body to a complete stranger. The last thing I want to do is scar them for life by making a face or a rude comment. So shake some extra powder on there and keep laying those strips. It'll be over soon enough. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the gold. I'm so honored. And thank you for all the positive comments too. I really do enjoy my job and I appreciate the love. I'm here to spread positivity for an area that has historically been reviled and treated terribly, and is only now experiencing a removal of the stigma. I got a full Brazilian as a dude. Female esthetician works on me. My GF is waiting in the lobby. After she's about halfway through the front she asks if she can ask a slightly unprofessional question. I say sure. She says she's never seen a circumcised D before but didn't ask me any actual question. Just made the comment. The worst part was that the walls were thin so pretty much the whole lobby heard the conversation. Esthetician student here. I plan on going into Brazilians Manzilians bikini waxing and full body after graduation. The number of people who come in during their monthly cycle only wearing a pad? Question mark. Come on now. Sperm bubbles. Women didn't always wash up after 6 and they'd come in for a wax. Sometimes the semen would form a bubble while you were waxing and then it would pop and leave you with an awful rancid sperm smell. I used to be an esthetician and I'll never forget the first Brazilian I ever gave a girl. I was inexperienced, so to get the butt area I made her go on all fours. After I powdered up her butt, I was holding her cheeks open and closely examining the direction of her hair growth so I'd know which direction to spread the wax, as I was trained to do. Then all of a sudden I see her butthole opening and closing and opening and closing, and then bam, she fully farted in my face. She was super embarrassed and said it was an air bubble. Didn't smell like one though. Not me or disturbing, but my instructor in cosmetology school told me about a time when they had to practice anal waxing, and the way she was supposed to do it involved her putting talcum powder on the butthole area. So she powders the person up, and as she is grabbing something else from her work table, the person lets out an airy toot and a little fluff cloud of powder came with it. She couldn't contain herself and had to do the assignment another day, haha. A waxy lady and I talk about this all the time. She said girls come in on their periods all the time. She doesn't mind as long as there's a tampon in place and it's clean. Some ladies don't comply. She's seen women who haven't properly wiped their BH after taking a dump. But the weirdest thing she saw was a girl who was born without an asshole. I don't know who, why, how, what, where, but yeah. That's weird. Unfortunate. Mostly. Edit. To clarify, BH means butthole. I'm not censoring. I've just gotten in the habit of sometimes calling it that because I think it's funny. Briefly worked as a waxer after I graduated from cosmetology school. Quit after this dude kept coming in with larger and larger anal beads in his ass. I once was the gross customer by pure accident. My former girlfriend liked the idea of shaving your chest etc. The less hair I got on my body the better. Blah blah blah. Insert story here. I did bleed so heavily out of every damn pore on my chest that the lady stopped mid-session. After the bleeding had stopped somewhat, I helped cleaning up, paid and left. The bruises were visible for several weeks. I did never try waxing again. Esthetician here. My worst experience was a full Brazilian wax on an extremely obese woman. I was relatively new to the field and lacked the experience to deal with this type of situation. I couldn't get the angles right. I felt so awkward asking her to hold her stomach that blanketed over her V, and her legs were just too large for me to actually reach the area. She was unable to bend the legs properly. I think at one point I lost wax between a fold and had to pry the skin hair apart to apply the strip. I remember my back hurting from the way my body was positioned, frantically trying to finish on time for my next client, and so much sweat. Both of us. It was the dead middle of summer. I'm sure a seasoned esthetician may have been able to handle this better, but that's my worst experience. I have a story from a client of mine about a previous coworker. So I have this client coming in for a Brazilian. As soon as we are in the room, she warns me that last time she was in, she didn't like her last experience and let me know that she has her clit pierced. I was like, cool, no probs. Thanks for the heads up. Let's try to make this better. I figured she lifted or bruised. So we get started. And there's the piercing. No biggie. Well, halfway through, she starts talking. And I was like, I hope this has been a better experience for you. I wouldn't want a repeat of last time. And she explains that it wasn't the waxing. It was the waxer, apparently. And she explained her piercing to the previous esthetician. She pulled the towel back and patted the pierced clit without gloves, saying how she has never seen one of these before. Under no circumstance are you to directly touch a client there. The woman was not impressed and refused to return until she was sure the previous esthetician was no longer employed. So it's not really my experience. I just felt bad for my client. My roomie had one today and said the lady doing hers went, see that pillow in the corner? We used to have it over here for y'all to clutch onto for comfort until a lady started hitting me with it. Now it stays in the corner. My mom's friend always liked to tell this one story. When she was doing his asshole, he clenched and accidentally projectile sprayed little bits of poo all over her. How many guy clients come in to get waxed, asking for a friend? Oh no. I have a story. I am not a waxer, but one time I was getting waxed at a new place and thought things were going just fine. I was making small talk with the esthetician while all spread eagled on the table. She was facing away getting her supplies ready and she started sniffling and I thought she might be crying. I was like, okay, I know it's been a while, but I can't be that shocking. And I asked, hey, are you okay? And she turned around just full on ugly snot crying and explained to me that the appointment before mine was her recent ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. I used to have really bad razor bumps like a methodica. After I learned to shave properly, there's still a bunch of dark marks on my mound area and a little on my thigh. I've always wanted to get a bikini wax but I'm embarrassed. Also my ass crack is dark and I know they wax that area too. Used to work with a girl whose second job was as a waxer. She would regale us with stories of this one repeat client who would get holiday themed designs. So not only would she create Christmas trees and Valentine's hearts for her, but would also have to dye them the appropriate color. I currently work at a waxing center and I have had many foul experiences. I love my job but sometimes I wonder why I still do this. A new client had come in for a full Brazilian. She was no older than 17 and it was her first time doing it. I was trying to make her as comfortable as possible and explain everything I was doing. So we finish the front and I tell her to flip over and hold her butt cheeks so I can do the butt strip. I apply the wax over her butthole. I guess she wasn't expecting it because she farted and blew a bubble with the wax. It popped so loudly that it echoed in the room. I had never seen anything happen like that before. I could see she was humiliated and I was embarrassed for her. I immediately turned around and started fumbling with anything I could get my hands on to pretend I didn't just see what happened. I never saw that girl again. Finally, it's my time to shine. There are two that I'll never forget. 1. The seemingly normal, average 20-something-year-old girl who apparently had no idea that her V butthole needed to be cleaned. Lot of women are kind of gross. But this one, she had her period, had an insane amount of discharge, and looked like she never wiped her ass. When I did the strips on her butt crack, there was poop on them afterwards. 2. The old man who would come in for Brazilian laser treatments. He was pretty weird from the get-go, like an older, flamboyant Jeffrey Rush. The first 2 times he came in, he got hard while I was lasering him. Guys get hard during waxes sometimes. You get used to it and they're more embarrassed than you are usually. The 3rd time this guy came in, I was on my last few rows when all of a sudden he made a noise. I looked up, and he had ejaculated on his stomach. I very quickly did my last 3 or 4 pops W the laser, told him he was done, and left the room. I called my manager and told her what happened and he was never seen again. He didn't even tip me . Also, the amount of women that fart while you're waxing them is unbelievable. They always get so embarrassed and I tell them it happens all the time. You're clenching, holding your knees up to your chest for part of it. It's bound to happen sooner or later. Eater. My highest voted comment is about poop in a woman's butthole and getting jizzed on while lasering an old guy's balls . My friend works as a beautician and does heaps of bikini waxes. One time she said she got wax stuck in around the clit of a client and had to go get the manager to help. I'm not sure how accurate this is. I'm gay and don't like V's. Edit. Spelling. Not bikini, but rather a Brazilian wax story. I once worked as a camera operator for an instructional video for estheticians learning how to do various waxing techniques. The male model for the Brazilian wax demonstration had extremely saggy and sensitive balls, which he apologized for prior to disrobing. Now picture this. He was in a tabletop position on his hands and knees with a well-powdered anus, balls drooping halfway down his thigh. The instructor was doing her talking bit after powdering said butthole, during which the model casually reached down under the table, grabbed a towel, and molded it between his hands into as high standing of a wad of towel that he could. He pushed the towel lump back along the table and through his knees. Upon bumping up against his testicles, it pushed the saggy sack back along the line of a pendulum, much like a person on a swing set pulled back about to be given their initial shove. Alas, there was no releasing the balls to the forces of gravity. Instead, he casually reached around the back of his legs, picked up the soon-to-be hairless pair and perched them on the towel mountain. The instructor continued on her script talking into the camera, none the wiser. It was a completely mundane but extremely bizarre scene. I left the camera running, zoomed on his anus mind you, and walked out into the hallway to collapse in laughter. This is the legend of Towel Mountain. Edit. Subbed in the word perched, as the balls were most certainly perched and not sitting on the Towel Mountain. Also, I walk ED past tense, not present. Gotta put my cock away while reading this one. So, I accidentally clicked on the comments here and not on the Papa's comments I was expecting on a GIF with Tiger Brothers. Imagine my horror, especially considering the Cadbury eggs comment, which was the top comment when I nearly had a stroke. A woman in her 40s came in, and 5 centimeters of her intestines were sticking out of her anus inside out. She told us she had pushed so hard when she gave birth that she pushed it out. Poop in the butt. Here's a tip, ladies. Take a shower before you come in. Schedule your waxing appointment around your toilet appointment. I provide a cleansing wipe before the service, so please use IT. But other than that, most people are very clean and away. This wasn't really something gross that the client did, but something that the esthetician did. I'm currently in school for aesthetics, and one of my instructors was telling us about a former student who was scheduled her first Brazilian appointment. Everything went well until she got to the woman's butthole and she wasn't really sure what to do with it, so she scooped some hard wax up with a popsicle stick, spread it across and stuck it inside her butthole like we do with nose waxes. Don't work in a salon, but I waxed my ex at home once. Got duck and wax all over the top of the microwave. It never came off. Not my story, but my aunt's. When she was in school to become an esthetician, the students would do cheap waxes on walk-in clients to help them learn. The first time she did a Brazilian, she noticed long red scratch marks as she was waxing the girl. Initially, she was worried she was doing something wrong, but neglected to say anything because the girl didn't seem in pain or anything. What she thought were scratches turned out to be part of a larger tattoo that covered the girl's entire vulvaeus. It said Bad Kitty and featured claw marks. Once she finished school, she limited her waxing to face only. My sister is an esthetician, and when she was in training she had a woman come in for a Brazilian wax. She was prepping her for the waxing, which involved cleansing the pubic area with an alcoholic base cleanser. As she did this, hundreds of crabs scattered from the woman's bush. Turns out the woman had no idea she had crabs and had to find out then that her husband was most likely cheating on her and passed them on to her. During my first full Brazilian, I asked the worker if she has had any horrible disturbing experiences. She replied, "I'm having one right now." She was joking, I think. Oh boy, are you guys in for a treat? I'm currently training as a beautician and work part-time in a beauty salon, so I've heard plenty of horror stories, but the one my teacher told me was definitely the worst. She had a woman come in wanting a Hollywood, all hair gone, but she seemed nervous about it because she said she had really dark, coarse hair. She thought, sure, no problem. She's done plenty of Hollywoods before. There's nothing she hasn't seen, or so she thought. My teacher leaves the girl to get ready, and when she comes back and she notices a foul smell, she doesn't say anything and begins to go about the usual procedure of the wax. Remember I said the client had dark, coarse hair? Well, she had so much of it that my teacher never noticed that not all of it was hair. She applies the wax, pulls one strip, and immediately feels like she's going to pass out. Connected to the wax strip is a big string of dark brown goo. She said she disposed of the strip as quick as possible and tried to clean up the mess caused by the gunk coming from this woman's V. Then asked her what the hell was going on down there. Apparently the girl said she was too embarrassed to go to a doctor about it and thought if she just got waxed it would get it all out. Safe to say, nobody in my class is too excited to start specialized waxing. My waxing lady used to work in an actual salon but now works mobile. She had a dude come into the salon who wanted his back, sack and crack waxed. As standard practice, she told him she would leave the room for a few minutes whilst he got undressed and positioned himself on the table. Upon her return to the room, she found the guy dressed in an adult's diaper, bib, frilly hat and with a dummy. He asked her if she would be his mommy. I think more it went down, but she didn't go into detail. I don't know if she quit right away, but that is why she no longer works in a salon and only has clients she can trust. It's funny this is NSFW even though you're all talking about work. How ironic. Someone had come in after some personal time with their partner. Obviously there was no condom used or no cleanup after because my waxing bed got cream-peed. The worst thing I've had to experience. And I'm now in nursing. I'm a vet and we had a client come in who did waxing at her home. Unfortunately, her curious dog got a bit too close and tipped the whole pot of wax over itself. It was a very long and not so fun day for the pup and everyone involved. That stuff is super hard to get off. My salon mentor told me about when she was in school they taught Brazilians because they were a big deal at the time. Sounded like they never actually demonstrated the act, really talked about how to react to an awkward situation. Her first client came in and was a bigger lady with a full bush who just got up on the table and spread her legs. She was wearing a dress and just let it all hang out there. Traumatized her a little at first. Now it's funny to look back on. When I interned at a salon last year, the owner and I talked about what kind of waxing they did there. Brazilians were common and she pointed out that a lot of people think that you need to have quite a bit of hair to wax. So naturally, everyone really grows it out before coming in. Well, we have to trim that before we can wax it, otherwise the wax pulls at the end of the hair instead of at the hair follicle. In her words, you think it's weird letting someone see your junk. Imagine making small talk and someone having to take a small pair of scissors and trim your bush. Please trim beforehand. My friend does this and brought us a story of the time she waxed a lady's tampon out. This doesn't really answer the question, but it is a weird waxing story nonetheless. So a co-worker told me that getting waxed at the beauty school was great. Super cheap and they did a really good job. She must have not gotten very many waxes. I go to my appointment and get this really sweet girl. So we're talking, she's waxing and then she's like, okay, so I'm just gonna get my classmate cause I need some help. So I'm like, okay. Look at the clock, it's been like 20 minutes and I look down and she has made little to no progress. Usually it takes 20 minutes tops. So her classmate comes in and I stop talking thinking maybe I distracted her and I'm just watching the clock. It's been almost an hour now and my legs are getting sore from laying there with them spread out. So I'll lie and say, hey, not to rush you guys, but I have an appointment in 20 minutes I need to get to, and they're like, okay, we'll get our teacher. Next thing I know I have 3 women crowded around my ducking V. Never went back. Not me. But I was watching a stream and this one guest there told a story of how she used to work at a spa doing massages and waxes. She had 2 separate women while getting their assholes waxed. One was apologetic and embarrassed and the other didn't even acknowledge it. I feel like this is a bad time to be eating yogurt. My waxer pulled off some of my peri area and I bleed all over the paper on her table. She didn't say a word. Acted like nothing happened. I had my husband clean it and put some ointment on it for a couple of days. I stopped going to her sometime after that. I am so paranoid. I shower before my Brazilian wax. Wipe myself with baby wipes. Back and front. Is that enough? Not completely on topic but just as gross. My boss has been piercing and tattooing like 20 years and he's got some gross stories. Most memorable one was a woman who came in for a clit piercing and he spies a little green shoot poking out of her V. Like vegetation. And he is like, oh excuse me, WTF is that? And she explains she put some garlic up there as an at-home remedy for something. And she left it in long enough for it to start growing apparently. A lot of people come in clearly fresh from Zix as well. I once assisted another friend removing a cheek piercing that was too short and the skin had grown over on the inside. She essentially had to just kind of poke a hole and push the jewelry back through. And when she did, a giant disgusting mouth pimple sort of popped and she had to dig out all the white it. This chick was barely wearing clothes, asking if it was cool to take some coke first, screaming her ass off and holding a Walmart bag full of veal dishes.